up? Welcome to a new episode of Schmovie. This is episode number 420, and my name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron
and John.
No awesome intro, no voice, nothing.
I'll tell you why. The movie, normally that comes from our required viewing, and I jotted down a few lines that kind of amused me in the course of the movie. But I found that none of them quite cleared the bar of like a particularly fun thing to say. The closest I had was that it's kind of fun to think about that voice that Kevin Costner does now. You know, he kind of does. There's this voice he says. And then everyone gets to do their sort of cowpoke accent. Like Luke Wilson comes in and does that. You know, anyway. So I thought a lot about how these guys talk, but none of the lines really. The closest one I had, Steve,
very telling. It's not a good start.
The part where Luke Wilson's character says, "Listen, you watch how and when the others bathe. You do like them." That's like the closest I had to a line that stood out to me. And it's like out of context, you know, it doesn't have a lot of zest to it. But I do think it's fun, the amount of actors that got cast in that movie that got to show up and do their sort of version of some kind of Western voice. Like you can tell actors love, like, or at least there's a certain class and maybe age group of actor that loves to get like a good part in a Western or even a small part in a Western. They really throw themselves into it. So it's more about the accents than the lines, I guess.
That works. So yeah, I guess that's a little tease. We're going to get into Ronald's pick first here in a moment for this week's required viewing, which is Horizon: An American Saga Part 1. And then we're going to talk about
Ronald's got some. Steve, it's not a part.
Oh, chapter 1. Sorry. Ronald's got some physical media. Well, I watched a part of the chapter. No,
it's a total chapter that you saw.
I watched part 1 of chapter 1.
You watched part 1 and turned it off.
Ronald, this guy thinks chapters are parts, Ronald.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm one of those guys.
One of those guys.
Takes all.
Ronald's got some physical media he wants to mention when he gets physical with us, and you, of course. And then we're going to talk about the boys finale, or the season overall, but specifically the finale for season 4. And what else? Acolyte, you guys want to talk about that as well?
Yeah, we'll talk about Acolyte.
Yeah, and then whatever else we've seen, but you'll find out about that in the next 45 to 60-ish minutes.
Ooh, that sounds like a great length, Steve.
Right? I'm optimistic tonight, John.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, let's get into the required viewing. Ronald, take it away.
It's an optimistic time in America, Steve. That's why you're feeling so.
I'm trying to.
Hell yeah, man. All right.
So, tell us about this, Ronald.
My pick was the 2024 Western epic, directed by Kevin Costner, Horizon: An American Saga, Chapter 1. Right?
Yeah.
Chapter 1. I'm about to part 1 it, but yeah, Chapter 1. Written by John Baird, Kevin Costner, and Mark Kasdan. So this is a really interesting body of work because there's a trilogy coming out,
or a quadrilogy.
That's 4
to be.
That's 4 coming out.
How many movies are there supposed to be, Steve?
I thought there was supposed to be.
I thought it was 3.
Okay, I had heard 4 at some point, but then everyone else maybe that I've heard has said 3. So that's why I asked.
I think this might be at this point. It might be a one-gy, depending on.
They've already made the second one, so there's at least one more coming.
I mean, look, Batgirl never came out, so didn't see the light of day, which is hinted at. They make fun of that in The Boys. We got to talk about that too.
Yeah.
Man, so this movie is self-funded and other sources outside of Kevin Costner, but Kevin Costner put quite a bit of money up for this movie and left a very successful TV show to try to make this American epic. So
he left an American epic saga television serialized show to make an epic American saga serialized trilogy of movies.
Here's the difference. The one that he left was one of the most popular shows in the past maybe 10 years.
I think the most popular on cable, at least.
Cable.
You know, like there's no question. Yellowstone is like Yellowstone is like easily top 3. I mean, like it's up there in terms of viewership.
Yeah, for sure. So he left a very successful property to go to one that he's creating. He's creating this world. We don't know any of these characters. And so yeah, this movie did not do well in the theaters, so much so that it got pushed to PVOD a little earlier than expected. It is $25 right now on PVOD. And I guess I want to know what you guys thought about Horizon, an American Dream, and then I guess I'll follow up with my thoughts.
Take it away, John.
Well, I mean, I love Westerns. And so there was a lot about this movie, like a good Western, and even kind of like an old fashioned Western in some ways. Like I want it to have certain earmarks of, like, I like a postmodern, modern take on Western iconography. A lot of my favorite Westerns are probably Westerns that do that, that sort of shatter the mold. And then there's the ones that paint in these broad strokes and with these big, like the mythic backdrop of, like, I actually feel like I should have looked up where Horizon was shot, but just some of the scenery in this movie is like, it does a certain amount of the storytelling, seeing that wide open country and seeing the, the desert and the mountains and everything, like just all the stuff they get in there, the valleys. You do feel like they found some terrain that feels untouched by time, and there's a certain attention to the exact detail of making this movie feel like a kind of old-fashioned Hollywood epic. So I think it's almost like it's an odd one to talk about, though, because it is part of a story. It is not a finished story. By no means does this movie finish any one story. None of the characters quite get a complete story. There is a little bit of the kid Russell who escapes one massacre at the beginning to kind of be part of another massacre towards the end. That felt like the closest thing to a character who had a complete loop, kind of arc
in this one,
in this story. So I do think it's an interesting movie to even talk about critically, when most of my criticisms would be based on the sort of pacing versus what we get for the time. So often we talk about like television shows that feel like maybe they're movies being stretched out. This kind of feels like a television show. I feel like as the first 3 episodes of a season of a show or something, it's pretty strong. As a movie, it's kind of like it goes halfway there in so many ways. So it's very hard for me to judge it as a particular movie. I know there's a part 2 that was supposed to be coming next month, that has now been delayed indefinitely, but I don't know if they'll go right off with this, Ronald. I know you made that comment, but like, I wonder, maybe that was off mic, but I wonder if they would do that. I don't think they would do that, but maybe hold on to it for a little while and see if they can drum up a little bit more word of mouth about this. I could see that being the case. By the way, Wikipedia does say there's supposed to be 4 of these. But the 3rd and 4th are stated as, well, the 3rd is stated as filming, and the 4th is stated as in development. Again, Wikipedia, the source of all truth in the universe, so we'll take that with a grain of salt. But just this idea that, like, Costner wants to do this. You mentioned it last time when Ronald picked it, Steve. It's a sort of Hollywood legend taking a big swing kind of thing. And I think on that level, I can really appreciate it, even if I really, I did not dig much into the stories about the financing for this film and the questionable aspects there. I have not really followed Kevin Costner as a human being. I don't know about him and his philosophy or his politics, but I can feel this movie having a sort of love for the genre, a sincere, it's like a weirdly sincere movie in 2024, but it does have, as I mentioned before, these character actors showing up to clearly have fun putting on costumes and be on a set and be with other actors that are kind of like playing pretend in a way that doesn't feel like the kind of modern green screened to death sort of extravaganza. So I don't know. I mean, I think I'm interested to see where this goes. As I'm interested to see how much more of this we get. But I have a little bit of a hard time, like, maybe as we talk about it, you guys chime in, it'll be easier for me to kind of figure out what it is, but it's hard for me to judge this movie on its own merits as a movie, because as a movie, I would say it's kind of slow paced and doesn't really have much of a storyline that ties everything together. And then I start to think about how some of the stuff in it is almost like shorthand. It's almost like that classic Western feel can kind of lend to moments that almost feel cliched. I think at its best, this movie avoids those moments and has an interesting tone that is all its own and kind of is like Kevin Costner's worldview, right? Like there's something in this that's like really sentimental, but also really hard edged.
Yeah,
And that's very Costner, right, Steve? I mean, you were saying last time,
absolutely.
how he's a guy, he's been in some of our favorite movies, but he's kind of an enigma in a strange way. And it is true that most of the stories you hear about him are not really good.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel pretty much the same, honestly. Like I feel maybe I'm a little colder on it than you are. Because I mean, I guess it suffers for me for the feeling of definitely feeling like the first part of something or the first chapter or whatever of an act of a story, even like the kind of set up for a classic storytelling structure. If it was 3 or 4, whatever it's going to be. But I don't know. I kind of felt like it took a while for me to even get into the movie. Like it is very slow, and like you meet so many characters so quickly, and like and that's impressive in some ways because the scope of it's so big. Like it is such a big swing, for a Western film. It's not really all that focused initially out of the gate. There's a lot happening, so for it to settle in on where this chapter ends, I felt like it was a little uneven for me, in that sense. Like I felt like a little distracted by a lot of story points and characters and happenings before it kind of like settles into where this chapter ends. But I don't know. I'm kind of mixed negative on it. I mean, I probably would watch the rest of this story to kind of see where it goes. But I do feel like I do feel like genuinely there's no denying like the charisma or like the star power of like you're watching a movie and you see lots of great actors and actresses on the screen. But I really do like wherever he falls on the nice guy schedule, like when he's on the screen, like he's kind of magnetic, like especially in this kind of world, which I think is what, Yellowstone works so well for him and for that show. He does have that pull that like, we had a lot more of those kinds of stars in the decades, when we were growing up, I think. And even in a movie that I thought was just okay, I felt like when he was on the screen, knowing about his involvement and that he directed this, like it is kind of still a bit impressive to me to be like, yeah, he still kind of got something going on as soon as he walks into a frame. And yeah, in general, I like Kevin Costner, like even outside of issues with him as a person, in his films, at least I find them interesting. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like I too like westerns, and maybe it's a good way to put it, John. I like good westerns. It's like definitely like what my dad and my grandfather always watched. So I was, fortunate enough to see some of the best. And there's been some recently that have been great. But this is kind of just kind of in the middle for me. And it does. I usually kind of like feel like it's a bunch of bullshit when people are like, well, this feels like a part one so much, and it feels like, the Spider-Verse stuff and like, recently, there's been many examples of this when people like kind of bitch about that or complain about it. And I usually am kind of like, I haven't really fallen on that side of the criticism because in most cases, I feel like those movies did have a full story or like a roundabout in terms of characters or an arc. But this does feel to me like something that is very much like this is a chapter one. Like this is like not a full arc for really anybody, maybe except the character John mentioned earlier. But
right,
yeah,
and that's like not a very dynamic character and
not
a
at
very
all
dynamic performance either. Like I feel like another actor in the role of that kid Russell could have really made an impression, but I had to keep kind of remembering that he's got feelings because he's it was like that stoic kid performance that felt kind of stiff. So I think for every charming character actor that's in this, there is like a moment that kind of falls flat. What do you think, Ronald? I mean, I know that we've talked a little bit about Westerns on this show, but I mean, like how does this fit in? You're the one that picked it. So was it what you thought you were getting?
No, I thought I was getting a movie. What I got was a 3-hour TV show feeling thing with the dialogue just feels a little like not good. The sets look so here's another thing that was really weird to me. So like I'm like looking at this movie on a pretty big TV. I'm like, okay, well, we got the scenery that's gonna look incredible. And somehow it didn't. Somehow it looked like dried oatmeal. Like nothing looked like the color grading in this movie was fucking weird. Like it looked like
it was too.
Yeah, it was like
too, a little bit.
It wasn't. If I'm looking at a terrain, like I'm looking at mountains, why does everything feel so dry and colorless? And it just didn't feel like, if he had somebody that shot it better, it would have looked better, would have felt better, would have. And sure, I love some of those epic swooping shots that they have, but this movie didn't look good. It looked like a TV show. It looked like a TV show, but TV shows look good. So it didn't look like a TV show. It looked like it was shot on a very high quality camera with no color grading. There was zero. It went from camera. It's like it went from camera to streaming service. It did. There was no processing of this video, and I'm not. How often do I say things like this? Like it was untouched. It was like. And then here's another thing. If we're in a Western, where this place is being built from the ground up, you're in the middle of the dirt. Why is everybody's outfit clean?
Yeah, I was going to say, Ronald, what you just said about the photography being kind of like like I don't want everything to be color graded to death, and sometimes I like it when a movie doesn't look color graded. But what you're talking about is not, they didn't like go in and give it like an aesthetic color grading. What you're saying is they didn't finish the footage. Like raw footage looks kind of crisp like that, and it can kind of look sort of I still would maintain there were some of those vistas that worked for me in terms of like the Western, just the feel. But I do know what you mean, that like then there would be these kind of murky, like any dark scenes were really kind of murky and hard to read. And also I do think there were some parts where it just didn't look polished, and I think the wardrobe looking like almost the outfits looking too crisp in some places. Yeah, there was something kind of weird about it. Like as much as I enjoyed seeing how old-fashioned it was, it didn't seem like I thought about several things. Like this movie feels like it wasn't made for like HD cameras in some way. That like made things look a little stagey in some spots. And I also think that kind of pokey pace. Everything you're talking about, Ronald, is hurt by that pokey pace, because like those dialogue scenes, I mean, honestly, when I said I would feel like it was solid if it was a television show, I don't know if I would keep watching it, but I do think those sort of long conversations, they fit more on a television show where you're 100%. Not thinking about like movie rhythms. But in this case, there's like several scenes where Kevin Costner's like, when he meets Marigold, the you know, I guess we'd call them sex workers now, but I don't know what we're supposed to. It feels disingenuous to call someone from the Old West a sex worker. But like when he's talking to her, like that scene goes on so long, where she like meets him in the post office where he's dictating the letter, and then he comes outside and they keep talking, and not
zero
much
chemistry,
zero chemistry, and not much comes of the scene either. Like so it's like that was when I started thinking, oh yeah, this feels like you wouldn't take, in most movies, you wouldn't take this amount of time. So I sometimes wonder, Ronald, when something's made outside of the system and it doesn't go through the normal studio development process, I feel like you end up with something kind of oatmeal-like, to use your term. Except I would describe it as wet oatmeal, not dry. Like it's mush. It's like it's just complete, like stylistic mush in some ways.
For sure.
Which is, you know, I think Kevin Costner has an eye for epic imagery or epic storytelling based on the movies that he's done. But no, I don't know. I'm glad to hear that I was starting to feel like, am I a jerk for not being like swept away by this? Because I did see certain people reacting to this, like certain people I like, that really were swept away, that I was like thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to really love this. Instead, I think solid is you know, that's my compliment for this movie. But also, I don't know. Like, I'm more curious about it as a part two than I am like dying to see the next part of the story. But I am a little curious where some of the story goes. I did think it was really strange to end the movie with like a next time on reel. Like it didn't set us up for that.
They Back to the Future 2'd us. I was like, oh God, this epic's coming. I'm like, I'm ready for it. And then, all right, this is long. It was like a legit trailer at the end, and it didn't transition from the end of the last scene to so I thought I'm like, this time is moving fast.
That's what I mean, Ronald. It didn't set us up. Like there was a split second where I thought we were watching a montage and not a next time on. But then I realized no, they wouldn't speed through all of this. And then I think that's the only place in the movie where Giovanni Ribisi shows up. Right? Is like he's one of the names listed in the credits, but he's only there at the end. And if you look in the credits, you find out his name and who he is, and we've been hearing his name throughout the movie. But I thought he had real Scoot McNairy energy in that one little shot. Something about him with the goatee and the kind of looking to the side with a kind of concerned face.
Scoot.
I was like, Scoot, Scoot. Exactly. But I don't know. I mean, I'll watch part 2. But
For sure.
There was a point watching this movie, honestly, in the first 15 minutes, I thought, I probably should have seen this on the big screen. I bet this would have been fun to see on the big screen. Yeah. And then about an hour later, I was like, I'm so glad I didn't go see this.
I know. I felt the same way.
Bullet dodged. I was like, golly, man, this is yeah. Here's the thing though, when it goes to Netflix, it is going to do gangbusters. It's gonna be number 1. Yes, Steve.
Really? You think so?
There's something about a mediocre movie coming to your lap where people are just like, I gotta eat this up. It's a Western with Kevin Costner. I'm in. It's gonna be number 1 for like 2 weeks. Mark my words.
I do wonder how many people are going to watch it because of all the factors we've kind of mentioned or hinted at, which is the kind of status of Kevin Costner, the Yellowstone status, the sort of dad movie status, whatever that is. Like, I do think there might be an audience that will seek this movie out, but I bet even they, about halfway in, will be thinking this is kind of long and slow. But I also think I kept making excuses for it, going, oh, there's a whole nother, like, 2.5 hour movie that's been shot that would add to this. So I'm not in a hurry to watch 2.5 more hours of it, but I am curious to see like what some of the stuff from that coming attractions reel. Some of that stuff looked kind of interesting.
It did.
I do think it's kind of also in that vein of a Western that does, at the beginning, it doesn't lean into the sort of wokeness that you expect from a Western with the way that indigenous peoples are depicted. And then I think I don't know if it does any better as it goes along, but it does end with a notion that sort of, it does kind of bookend that opening slaughter with a scene that makes me feel like, okay, it might be going towards more of a like equal footing of following the Native American characters as well as the settlers. But initially there was some kind of compelling stuff. I mean, honestly, I don't know if it's a sign of what this says about your movie when Sam Worthington is one of the more nuanced actors in it. But I was a little curious about that guy, but it really looks like they're doing a slow burn romance between him and the widow, and that just feels to me, that just sounds so boring though to watch. Like, do you really want to see like a long? I mean, maybe that'll charm me, but that feels like a plot line that will bore me. Watching them warm up to each other. But that was rough. No, honestly, when I said it goes hard, like there is something about Kevin Costner that he doesn't shy away from a certain kind of nastiness. There was some real violent stuff in this. I felt bad for poor Walter getting clocked on the head.
Yeah, he was done.
He was not cut out for this world, though. That's that character that from the second you see him, like, nope.
Yeah, I mean, he was talking to a man with a fucking fur coat on and a big ass shotgun. He didn't stand a chance.
No,
he didn't stand a chance.
Pour one out for Walter. I thought when that scene, I liked when the brothers were fighting and the bigger brother like kicked the younger brother down, and it was like went to a side shot and he like kicks him in the chest and kind of knocks him. That was really something about the way that was shot really got me, and I feel like it kept having little moments like that. I thought it was kind of cool when Kevin Costner shoots the Weasley brother next to the trough. I thought that was just like a kind of unconventional staging, and also like just the fact that the guy was like doing such a wild manic thing, like the fact that the guy never had it was not like a fair match at all between these characters. I thought that was kind of interesting, but it feels like the story momentum of that was really weird. Like that moment was that whole scene where he like meets him and then he talks his way up to the house with him, and then that was just, it was a weird scene. But I think that's what I mean when I say the movie kind of sidestepped some Western cliches. Like, I don't know that I've quite seen a scene like that before. It was a weird, like that the brother who got shot, Caleb, was just a weird, unsettling character, and I kind of thought he was going to hang around longer in the story. But anyway. I'm glad I watched it. I was going to watch it anyway. When you picked it, I was like, okay, good. Now I can really make time for this this
now
beast.
it's Mando. You gotta watch it now. Yeah.
Right, well, that's true. I'm hooked in. Damn it.
Yeah, good.
But I don't know how long I would stay hooked in. Like I said, if this was a television show, I might watch a couple more and probably go, "Oh, this is solid," but there's too many things that are way better than solid.
Yeah.
But the sinking your fortune into a movie that doesn't do well. I mean, there's some pathos involved in this. Like I'm kind of, I feel vaguely supportive of it as
Me
a
too.
project, even though I did not love it.
Yeah. Wild. Who's next? Who has the next pick?
I think it's me, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stick on this idea of doing required viewing for movies that come out on VOD the week that we record.
I like it.
But I've been hearing amazing things about this movie called Kill. And it comes out next week on VOD. It's in theaters, or it had like a limited run. Excuse me. Limited run currently. I mean, it's in it right now. But I'm trying to figure out what kind of release schedule it got, but I don't think it was very far and wide. But I think Roadside Attractions put it out recently. But yeah, I mean, basically this is like an action film that is during a train trip to New Delhi, a pair of commandos face an army of invading bandits. Basically, it was sold to me as The Raid on a train. And
What?
John meets John Wick kind of stuff. And it's already been announced that they're remaking it, a US remake, which I think either Chad Stahelski or David, the one that just did the Fall Guy, the other John Wick guy, that they one or both of them are involved with the US or the American language remake. But this one looks awesome. The trailer is incredible. It's gotten amazing reviews, both from an audience and a critical standpoint. And yeah, I can't wait to watch this movie, but it's going to be on VOD as of Tuesday, the 23rd. So it'll be nice and fresh for us to watch and talk about next week. But yeah, it's called Kill, and it'll be on VOD next Tuesday.
Sweet.
Cool.
Speaking of things being released and release dates, is that a good segue for getting physical with Ronald?
Yeah, sure. Yes. Let's get physical.
I think a good segue is when you ask if it's a good segue.
Yeah.
That's when you know you killed it. You killed it.
Let's get physical.
Okay. Real quick. I think I may have talked about this. Medicine for Melancholy. Yeah. So this is a Barry Jenkins, his first full-length film. It is in the Criterion Collection. Also, the Criterion Collection, 50% off right now. So jump on it. Get a good movie that normally would cost $50 for $25.
Oh, really?
Ooh.
Like Miller's Crossing?
Like Miller's Crossing? Holy shit. There's a couple that I want to get. And I saw that I was like, sure, get this. Okay, I'm sorry. You got me distracted. I'm thinking about movies now. Krampus, the Naughty Cut. Why does this look like it's blood?
Your blur is it won't focus on it. Hold it in front of your face, like close to the camera.
Wow, it's really blurry.
Like up to the camera.
Up to the camera,
like in front of your face. Yep. Keep pushing in. Wow, it won't even focus on it. Oh, there it was for a hot second. Oh, there it is, right there. It is. You got it for a second, guys.
Yeah. Yes. Krampus, the Naughty Cut. This is one of the better sounding movies that I've ever heard in my life. Like it is really? Immersive. It's like Twister level immersive. That's not pictured here, but the new Twister that came out, the Atmos track for it is unreal. And if you want to have fun and you want a good sounding movie, Krampus, the Naughty Cut. It took me a little while to find it, to be honest with you. But it is a fun movie that sounds incredible. My next one, Solo. This is the Target exclusive. Shout out to Bradford Young for shooting this. I met him not too long ago. I kind of want to see if he'll sign it. I don't know if he'll insult me for wanting to get it signed, but you know, he's Go ahead. What
I
were
mean,
you
it's
gonna say?
people. I was just gonna say, I hope he knows that people sleep on that movie, and it's a good movie. I mean, I hope the
Yeah,
people involved
it's
with
a
it
good movie.
at least know that it's good. I
It's a
think
good
most of the people think it does, but I think sometimes you hear people start to believe oh, I guess we messed up on that one, and it's like there were some reasons maybe
nah.
why it wasn't the movie that was going to connect with audiences at that time. But as far as like when you look at all the Disney era Star Wars stuff, I think it's one of the most enjoyable ones that they made.
Yeah, for sure. And my last one is Taxi Driver.
Ooh.
Damn it. Damn it.
You're really, I mean, you got to have that blurred background.
Yeah, my back
It's
is
your
crazy.
choice.
It's crazy back there. It's like it's a mess. But yeah, Taxi Driver was a part of the Warner Brothers 100 pack. So you essentially had to spend hundreds of dollars to get Taxi Driver that was one film out of this pack of 4Ks. So eventually Columbia Pictures 100 pack. And it comes with like 10 movies or something like that. And it's an incredible deal. But if you just want one movie, you have to spend hundreds of dollars. And they decided a couple months ago that they'd release a steelbook that was separate from it. I've honestly haven't seen Taxi Driver in its entirety. I've never seen it in its entirety. I heard this is the best way to watch it, so I'm pretty excited about watching. Not pictured here is also my last one, which is Twister. Man, I understand that Twisters is coming out and it's going to probably be epic. I'm really looking forward to it. Probably going to see it this weekend. But go back and watch the first one. Particularly this cut's a little weird because it was color graded a little differently. We talk about color grading again, but apparently one of the big deals was the original intent was for the sky to be completely green when the tornado was coming. Now, in the theatrical version and the Blu-ray and whatever came out prior to this 4K, the sky was completely clear with a slight tint of green. Now it's completely green, and fans are losing their shit because it's green. It's like epically green. So people are losing their minds. They're like, that's not a movie that I originally intended. But director's intent, man. It's like that whole thing where you can go back and revise it the way you want it to be. It's a strange revision of something that you've seen before.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember it being that green, and it is so green. So yeah, those are. It's a great movie. Obviously, Twister's great, but you guys need to come over and listen to The Storm. One of these storms. It just sounds nuts. So those are my physicals. I'm very excited.
Thank you for getting physical with us.
Thanks for getting physical. Physical.
Thank you for having me. So what have you been watching? What's been going on?
We this was the week where a couple of the big when we talked about all the shows coming back in June, it was House of the Dragon, the Bear, Acolyte not coming back, but Star Wars coming back with a new show, and then season 4 of The Boys. And now we are down. The only show that's still kicking out there is House of the Dragon with 3 more episodes. But so this week was the week that, in fact, when we're recording this, I just a little while ago finished watching the finale for season 4 of The Boys, and then earlier this week was the season finale of The Acolyte. Both of those were 8-episode seasons. They were kind of over fast. Both of those shows, I think, burned off an episode or 2, maybe 2 on the first week. It was 3 for The Boys and 2 for Acolyte. So they're short seasons, but it still feels like I've been enjoying that kind of weekly appointment with The Boys in particular, but also just having new stuff to watch. I mean, even when I'm not in love with like a Star Wars show or something like that, there's something that brings me back to it. And I do think The Acolyte had things throughout the season that made it feel like something. And then The Boys is just more of the same. If you like the tone, I feel like season 4 kind of delivered. I don't know where we want to start. Has everybody watched The Boys?
Yep.
And Steve, you did not watch The Acolyte, right?
Yeah.
Any of it?
I have not even started it. That's correct.
Okay. Well, we'll in a minute we'll do some spoiler free or spoiler light little comments about The Acolyte. But let's talk about The Boys. Steve, I know a few episodes ago, you said that The Boys is just to show you have fun watching. That was early in the season. Is that sort of generally still your feel for it, as far as like you watch this show and you know even no matter what's happening, you're going to be entertained?
Yeah, I really genuinely feel like it might be one of my favorite shows to watch. Like, not, you know, I love the show in general, and it is one of my favorite shows also currently. But I mean, specifically, like, I get so much entertainment and like fun, joy watching the show. You know, not just speaking to the quality of it, but just my experience in watching television. You know, some shows are great, but I don't know that I'd ever say like it's fun to watch. You know, it's a good experience, but it's just different. And I just feel like The Boys, there's so many elements of it that just work so well for me. You know, like the superhero angle is one thing, flipping it on its ears a bit, you know, another thing, some really great casting, some really great characters. You know, how timely all of it is with its, you know, commentary on our society, on our political system. It's so many of those things played so well to me that I genuinely feel like it might be my favorite show to watch. And overall, like, I feel like every season I've loved, and I did love this season, definitely. I don't know that this season had as many kind of like wow epic things happen as some other seasons had, but there's definitely there's many things in this season to kind of pinpoint and talk about as wow moments. But what I feel like, you know, walking away from the season finale of season 4, and, you know, not going to really get into many spoilers, but like just thematically, I kind of loved how this is kind of like a Empire, you know, season finale, or Infinity War season finale. Like, I love that vibe and that feeling that, like, you know, when things don't go as planned, you know, and just setting it up for a final season. Just it feels like it's a great setup for a final season, to be honest with you. But yeah, overall, I thought the season was great, and I love this cast. I love the show. It's great.
Yeah, I think that they gave you a good season finale, and you felt like you were getting a pretty good bittersweet ending.
Yeah,
and then like the last 3 minutes were like, okay, now here's your
I know.
Like, I thought that was really impressive. I mean, it made me feel like one of those peak television shows where you're watching the season finale and some shit's going down that you're like, what? Like, it was really well delivered. It was really well, like the way Game of Thrones could like pack in a crazy occurrence and like make you feel like both the satisfaction of a plot turn that makes sense, but also the sort of thrill, dread, whatever, of having the rug pulled out from under you.
Yeah.
Ronald, what were your feelings on season 4 of The Boys?
I enjoyed it. I kind of feel like, you know, like Steve said, like there weren't as many like wow moments, but, you know, it's a continuation of a really good story. I didn't really like where Sister Sage was going at first, but when it all comes around, it comes around, and then you realize, like, you know, she's a person of multitudes. It's cool to see all of it kind of come together. I'll say that.
I think she's top of my list, though, of a character who I'm like, okay, the fact that she didn't just get laser beams shot through her head. There's like 2 moments where it's like, I don't know if I quite believe that Homelander would show restraint with someone like that. But I think this show has always, we talked about this last time we mentioned it, the show has always done that mutually assured destruction thing, or someone's useful to somebody thing. So there is a way that I can tell myself it's believable, that, because it's like, there's many times where it seems like Homelander's going to kill a person, and when he doesn't, you think, why did he spare this person but not all these people? I think there is something too, like with Victoria Newman or with Sister Sage, how some people can kind of talk to Homelander in a way that most people can't. I just think that like that was a little bit of a like for me to swallow that. But I agree with you that like having a person who relates to particularly him, but just the whole story in the way that she does, a person who really is just like super smart. You just sort of have to believe that that wouldn't be the first person everybody would try to kill. Do you know what I mean? Like, because she, like, I just don't know that he would be as impressed, but I do like the idea that, like, in that moment where he could have been vindictive towards her, he was more kind of impressed at what she pulled off because, you know, we can see at the end of the season, he's on the upswing. It's not like he's down. If he was down at that moment, I don't think he would have been so forgiving, you know? So, but yeah, Sister Sage was an interesting addition, and I also thought Firecracker was an interesting addition, just in terms of what she brings out in Homelander and how she kind of represents somebody who you kind of, I mean, as much as she was disgusting and I kind of hate her, there's a part of me that almost feels sorry for her just because I feel like something truly awful is going to happen to her because of like she doesn't seem to understand forces that she's playing with, you know, that to her it's a little bit of a game. But that scene with her in the milk. With Homelander was one of the biggest laughs. My family.
Oh my God.
We all fell off the couch at that moment. And the way Anthony Starr played the moment where he instantly went into like super turned on horny mode. That was just great acting on his part. And she played it really well too. So, you know, but you're right, Steve. It's funny. It's shocking. I felt like this season in some ways was I might be able to point to some of those wow moments or some of those super satisfying moments that really clicked for me. But I do think the pattern of the show, it now has to kind of break its own rules and top itself in weird ways in order to surprise you. Whereas for a few seasons, it really could surprise you just because it was showing you the real physical consequences of some of these superpowers that we take for granted. But now that gag is over, they still find ways to just like go over the top. And I saw people saying, okay, this show's just gone into shock value now. But to me, that's just part of like the humor of the show. I mean, I found myself laughing at most of that stuff. And even the political commentary that I understand for some people was like a little warmed over because it was kind of, you know, 2 years dated back or something with what it's commenting on specifically. I felt like this last episode felt like they knew what was happening in the news today when it was written.
Right.
All the ways in which it touches on like who's really running things and the assassination attempts and all that stuff. So I don't know. I feel like the show, they managed to, even if they filmed some of this stuff close to 2 years ago, I think they managed to feel very, very current. And maybe it's just because no one else is being as blatantly political as this.
True.
That again, I find it kind of refreshing. And it doesn't have to be subtle. There's other ways the show can be subtle.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Like there is like it's strange that in the middle of this like really outrageous violence, there is a lot of like subtlety in it. There is like some real like care and this some of the commentary on power. Some of it is like right on the surface, and then some of it is like a little more like the thing with Homelander and Sister Sage is a little more nuanced, right? Like, so it's this black woman in a space, you know, politically, black women really do have like a voice that is pretty consistent and like ahead in a lot of ways. You know, it's like it makes perfect sense that he would rely on this woman that kind of is ahead of the curve in terms of like, these are how these people are going to be. How do I know this? Because I've seen them act like this before. Right. Because I'm a little more observant in this way. So I thought that was dope. I thought that was really cool. And you could look at some of the things on the surface that she did, but also that guidance and why he didn't kill her, despite her driving him crazy. Because he, you know, it is that mutual assured sort of violence. But it was also like, he's gotten further along in knowing her in a month or whatever than Ashley the entire time. You know what I mean? It's like, no offense to Ashley because I fucking love her. She's so good. She's so good. So, you know, I think that's really, really interesting. I love just seeing the gang together, being vulgar and reacting to violence. Like, I love that. I love it. I like that Mother's Milk has kind of become the definitive leader. Like when he's always had that sort of feel, like the dad feel, but like I love that he took control in this season. Laz Alonso is just one of those guys, man. I remember him in Avatar. I remember him in Fast and the Furious. He always kind of stands out in these like little roles, but like he has such a big role, such a fleshed out role, family, kids. I love that stuff, man. I love, and I'm invested in all of the people in that group now. Like I love that. I love that, and I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with all the things that occurred in this season, because Homelander ain't stopping.
No, and there's nobody to stop him except for you make that little list of like who's out there that could conceivably stop him. And it's like whatever's happening with Ashley, we don't know what kind of mutated freak she's going to be next year.
Yeah.
But like she is not on the inside with Homelander. A-Train's out there. Starlight's out there. I don't know. There's a few people that could help that are like potentially people that might find each other, because A-Train's kind of connected to both Starlight and Ashley, as far as people that he has had a scheme going with. So I don't know. I do think there's an interesting set of characters that could be the sort of rescue squad. But I don't know if they're going to pick up 5 minutes after that ending, or if they're going to pick up 6 months after. Like how far into this like dystopian Homelander's America are we going to get? But like, I thought that was, I don't know, if people were looking for the season finale to kind of push things forward and tie a season together, I feel like that episode really did push a couple things forward. And it's not that there's collateral damage too. I mean, we lost. I don't know if people want to skip ahead 30 seconds or whatever. I'll just say the name now. But Victoria Newman is a character that we've had, for a while, and she's another character that I kind of like, despite the fact that she's terrible. And I knew the second she gave the sort of wistful monologue about her childhood and whatever, that when she was talking to Huey, I knew after that scene, and the music even became like kind of sappy. I was like, there's no way in hell this show is going to have sappy music and then cut to a speech of Huey saying maybe forgiveness is the answer. It's like there's no way this show. They didn't say forgiveness wasn't the answer. They're just not going to let this happen. You know what I mean? They're not going to let that be the thing that carries the day. And now that Butcher has sort of taken as much of a heel turn as we need him to take. I think, he's on an equal footing with Homelander in some ways, like as far as someone who seems like the story of this show is going to be what happens between those two guys. You know what I mean? Like in the end, who's left standing, if anyone is sort of the arc of the show. And I even think now that Huey and Butcher, I feel like there's going to be real bad blood there. Like I don't think Huey's going to forget the way that Butcher, the one time he tried to say, just trust me on this, that like, I don't think he was going to forget that. He doesn't have a lot to do against Butcher, but Butcher's now just as scary as Homelander in his own way. So I think that's an interesting way to go into a final season. And I do think if this show's going to spin off and have different kind of tentacles and story, it does seem like at the end of this show, we should know what happens with Homelander and what happens with Butcher. It would be weird to like, have one of them survive to fight another day at the end of this show. But I don't know, are they firm on that next season is the final one? And then there's going to be some kind of like, the last episode is supposed to be a real big event?
That's what Eric Kripke said, 5 seasons.
Yeah. So, I mean, do it. Tell a story. Do what you intended to do. Let's rack up that body count. This show is just, there's nothing else like it,
Yeah,
and
there's
not anything that's that shocking and that kind of, like you said, Steve, just kind of endlessly entertaining. Even when it pushes it a little too far, I kind of feel like they're just doing what they're supposed to be doing. I know, I'm giving them a lot of leeway for some of this stuff, but even the stuff that like people were getting, a lot of people were making a case that the show was making light of sexual assault with Huey's storyline in that, when he's in disguise as Web Weaver. But I feel like they kept it just on the line of like what actually happened to him was gross and unsettling, but he was on a mission. And I don't know. I mean, I can see why some people would say that's not for me. But on top of the fact that Huey's a fictional character, he didn't actually experience sexual assault. It didn't really happen. I feel like what the show was presenting as a joke was not so much what was happening to him, but it was the trying to think of the safe word. And he was just shouting all these spider words. I don't know. That was funny to me. I mean, again, I'm a terrible person maybe for not thinking that's too far, but I think the show knows what it's doing with like the limits that it will go to.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and I think that like it picks the right targets, maybe I should say. When it has its totally gruesome stuff happening, it usually picks the right targets. So I guess I would say any predictions, but it's kind of hard to say. But do you think we're going to get do you think next season is going to be all about getting the team back together for a one last hurrah, or do you think it's going to be a totally different kind of broken world season?
I don't know, man. Does he need the 7 anymore? Like, I'm like, since he has this like
super genius,
he has a super genius, and then he has everybody at his
like a task force, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Oh yeah, right.
Task force all over the country.
Every superhero that is like of any kind of violence or force.
When the Gen V kids showed up, that was so badass to me.
That was like fucking awesome.
Yeah,
that was a crossover event.
So good.
We're watching 2 TV shows, and for some reason, I'm like, oh, they're connected. I knew they were connected, but they're connected. Yeah, it was so great. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, right, you knew they were connected, but it was still a thrill to see the way they were sort of being honest, maybe even about how these characters would be deployed, not sugarcoating it and trying to make everybody stay likable.
Yeah.
But it got me thinking, it probably will be a while before we get season 5 of The Boys, but I bet season 2 of Gen V will be sooner.
Pretty soon, right?
Yeah, I would imagine.
Maybe like
did they shoot any of it yet? I don't even. Did it start shooting yet?
I just mean it'll be sooner probably than whatever, year and a half, 2 years The Boys schedule might be on, but maybe The Boys will be sooner. I know that Gen V lost that actor in the motorcycle accident, and I hate that I don't have his name on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah,
but I wonder if that plus the strikes kind of threw off the momentum of when that show might come back. But either way, I'm into this world, and I like the idea that there's different places it could go. But I really hope that what this show does is kind of deal definitively with that idea of like, this was the group of people that came together to take Homelander down. Like you kind of want that to be the story of this show, even though I don't think Homelander has to die. Like, I don't think that means that it's that cut and dried. But it almost seems like he's got to, right? Like if this show ends, that's like the one thing they haven't done yet, and the one thing that you can only kind of do once, I guess, is take him out. But I wanted Victorian. Oh shit! I told people to skip ahead 30 seconds, so never mind. There's a certain character I was hoping would get to use their powers one last time.
Me too.
I didn't know who it was going to be, but I thought it was going to be in one of those last moments.
I was so pissed about that. And she was a great character.
She was.
Great character. Maybe her daughter will be in Gen V.
That's what it looked like.
It looks like, yeah.
Like the place where she was entering is sort of one of the institutions on Gen V, so it's like Grey Malkin University, and then whatever that place is called, Red River.
Red River,
yeah.
Well, all right. Steve, have you not watched any of The Acolyte?
0.
Okay. So we can get into, I think we could say a few things that won't ruin. Even better.
Mm-hmm. And you just give me a thumbs up or come back.
Yeah.
Well, what was your feeling when the season ended this week, when you got to the end of episode 8?
I liked it. I'm not so bad on it. I mean, like it was by no means a perfect show, and I wasn't expecting it to be, but I do think there is some cool sort of like assessing. The problem is I've always had an issue with the way that the Jedi kind of acquire talent, like. And them turning this into kind of like a who polices the police, like the who watches the Watchmen sort of feel to it, is a really interesting sort of thing. I'm glad they explored it. What Was it executed the best? I don't think so. I don't think by any means it was. But I do think
the lightsaber battles were pretty much all incredible, though.
what the hell was I even watching? Like there were parts where I was like, I didn't think that was possible. And then it's just seriously just taking the lightsaber and using it in a way that could have been used 20 years ago that somebody just didn't think of, because it's like, oh, why don't we just reverse it? Why don't we try to choke somebody out with it this way? Mm-hmm. It's just like, what am I looking at? Like, it just fresh ideas every battle. So what'd you think? What'd you think in the end on after the last episode?
I mean, I think I might line up with you pretty well. I think that when it got to the last episode and you saw they really were giving you morally dubious to morally corrupt Jedi, and giving you sympathetic Sith user or Force user who's on the Sith side. It was unclear whether we really were looking at Sith or whether we were looking at something else. But the idea that you have the people outside the Jedi Order, from the witches to Khmer, to just all these characters that were like sympathetic, not 100% correct and good necessarily, but sympathetic.
Right. Yeah.
And then on the other side, you have Jedi who clearly think they're doing the right thing, but have become like, it's kind of like the ACAB of the Jedi. It was, all cops are bastards. It's like, it was very much like AJAB. It's all Jedis are bastards in this. It's like, it really was that story. And I kind of think when they announced it and they said, this is telling us the Sith point of view, it's got a darker outlook. Yeah. I feel like this show may have been as dark as Star Wars under the Disney banner would ever go, with this kind of family-friendly show. Yeah. I almost think that's one of the problems, is if this wasn't trying to be a family-friendly show at the same time, I think they really could have gotten into some of that darker, more dubious stuff. But I think once they got there, I was like, well, they actually did it. Like, I don't know that it needed to be 8 episodes to get there, but when we're at a point where I'm looking at Jedi and there's not a single Jedi that I don't think is kind of an asshole, and then all the people that aren't Jedi, I thought Amanda Stenberg was kind of okay. Like, I feel like she had moments. Other moments she was very flat. So I don't think she carried the show for me, but Manny Jacinto did. And I thought he was incredible. I think he's the most exciting thing to happen to Star Wars, since Grogu, for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but as far as what he brought, his physicality, those movements, like they even said they wanted to create a different kind of feel than we've ever seen with this guy's fighting style. But just outside of that, the charisma and the sex that was in, like, there was a little bit more like, he was using being hot as a persuasive tactic to bring someone over to his side. I just feel like that it was the horniest Star Wars thing ever made for that reason. And I think the creator, Leslie Headland, I think I'd heard that she likes fanfic and has written fanfic. Okay. I feel like this felt like the first sort of fanfic aware Star Wars thing. Like the Kylo Ren and Rey stuff was out there, but I feel like this is the first show that seems to be made knowing that we're going to give people these little nuggets of hotness that they can just take and run with when they go and write fanfic. But no, I thought Manny Jacinto, it's almost worth the whole show just to get that character and that vibe. And honestly, I've always liked him. I thought he was phenomenal in this, and really one of the bright spots. I think other actors did not have as easy of a time making all the dialogue work. And I think I said this to you off mic, that like, I feel like there's a problem with Star Wars in general, that it can be kind of dry and flat. And I think that when it's nailed with super charismatic acting and it's got snappy dialogue, that dry flatness works as a stylistic thing. But when it's not super snappy dialogue and maybe actors that aren't so sure how they fit in with this, it just could feel kind of flat. And I think the show had a lot of moments that were sort of like that, where the emotional dynamics of a scene wouldn't really get me, but later thinking about what had happened in that scene would get me. And then on top of that, 40%, 30% something of the scenes actually were somewhat electric, and most of those scenes had Manny Jacinto in them. I just felt like they took a little too much time teasing out this background mystery that in the end, I don't think was a particularly well told story. Like, in terms of the way it was revealed, I just don't know. It's like it did not work for me as well as it could have, but I did like it. And I'm really interested in a couple of these character threads, and also just in this era of the story. I like this earlier age where things are a little different. What about that last minute cameo?
Who is that?
Did that throw? Oh, who was that? You mean the last scene when?
Is it Grogu? Is it?
No, it's Yoda.
It's definitely Yoda.
Well, I mean, she says Master Yoda. I'm pretty sure.
I didn't hear her say anything.
But I mean, at the time when this is set, Yoda would be running things. So,
okay. I don't know if I thought that was Yoda. I didn't hear Yoda.
Well, I mean, it's definitely Yoda.
Oh.
I mean, unless it's Yaddle, that other Yoda creature that was part of things, but I don't think so. I mean, I think what we're supposed to think this whole time is everyone knows Yoda's alive and running things at the time of this.
Okay.
So, like, people were saying Yoda could be part of this show, but it also felt like something they didn't need to do. But I honestly think having that character talk to Yoda about these events, it does change something about, like, what Yoda knows later and how easily Yoda was fooled by Palpatine like 100 years later or whatever that is. So I don't know. I'm curious as to whether Yoda being there really added anything for me. That felt almost like a post-credit stinger, less like a last scene. Because the last moment of Osha and Kamir holding hands was to me more significant than that last second cameo. It felt like a little bit of a tag. But I don't know. Yeah, it's Star Wars. I'm still in. I'll watch the next show. I think the next thing up is that show Skeleton Crew. So, okay, we can wave Steve back in. I was just saying, Steve, the next thing is Skeleton Crew, which I believe, you know about that.
That looks good. Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Does that come out this year?
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe early next. I haven't seen anything from it except for the logo and then read the log line. Which era is it set in, Steve? Do you know?
Don't know.
Oh.
It says 2024, but I bet it comes out late in the year. How's that possible? That's crazy. That's crazy. Two Star Wars shows in a year, or three? What do we have? Two. I
think that's two. Yeah.
Yeah, two.
They're trying to slow it down, but they still have all these little things happening. So
Jaleel White's gonna be in this show.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't mean to say it like that. I don't mind if he's in it. I don't know why I sounded disappointed.
Well, I just think it's funny trying to pick. Do you think they're going to slap a bunch of makeup on him, or is he doing a voice for a robot? Like, I wonder what the.
I think he's going to get redemption like Jar Jar Binks, like the guy that played Jar Jar Binks. Like, I think they're going to like, oh, you've been known as this one kind of person, and now here's your new role, hopefully.
Yeah, it does say like around Christmas, it says. And it looks like it takes place in the same time frame as The Mandalorian.
Oh.
And it's interconnected spin-offs after the events of Return of the Jedi.
Okay, so it's in the Ahsoka, Mando, Boba Fett, etc.
So they're really going to bring them together. This is really going to happen. Apparently, like, in the end, they're going to weave them together at some point.
Well, they're supposed to be one of the movies that they have on the slate. Yeah, is like the movie that ties all those storylines together.
Really cool.
I could see that being cool. I mean,
me too.
Like, even if I haven't been on board for each one of those things throughout, I think I like the idea of seeing it movied up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Because I do think that's the kind of missing thing that, even though they make these shows look as movie-ish as they can, there's still something. And I honestly think the Acolyte, it felt almost like Star Trek at times. And that's not necessarily a knock.
Yeah,
it's just the sets and the way that people were interacting with things, it felt a little bit more...
I liked it. Yeah,
I think I told you guys this at first, after we watched just the first couple episodes, that it felt like more TV-sized in some ways.
Yeah.
And I do think in some ways it was smart about that. But I still got to the end of this season thinking, oh, this could have been a heck of a movie.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have had to draw out so much of that stuff. Well, what else did we watch to wrap up the shoe?
I think have we all seen Maxxxine?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I went and saw it yesterday.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of it?
Well,
we haven't heard from you for a few minutes, Steve. Let's get your
I liked it. I mean, we can kind of go through these quickly. I did like it. I thought I was gonna like it more than I did, if I'm being honest, just because of mainly. I think I probably like X more, or as maybe my favorite of the three, but yeah, I don't know. I was like, the 80s theme or the 80s setting and like kind of the setup of what this movie was really, really fun and I think just kind of plays really well to my interest. It's awesome soundtrack. It looks awesome. It's well shot, and I liked it. But I guess I thought it was going to be a little more slasher-y
Me too.
than it was.
Yeah.
And I think Mia Goth's great. I mean, I think she's great in all of these movies that she's done with Ty West. But yeah, it's fun. It was a fun time at the movies for sure. I think maybe I had a little bit of a different expectation for what the movie kind of ended up being for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you guys think of it?
I thought it was fun. I know what you mean though. Like there was definitely a level of like, is this going to be more horror elements? I mean, even the story felt like it could have also still been more slasher with the exact same story. And if we saw more of the slasher in question actually committing some of these things rather than in the aftermath of it, right? So like that would have kept me into like feeling like this was more of a slasher, but you're right. Yeah, it didn't feel the same as any of the other ones, but that didn't feel like a particularly bad thing. It felt
Yeah.
like one of those like 80s schlocky sort of exploitation movies with a slasher kick on the top of it, which I really
Yeah.
thought was cool. And then what it kind of unfolds out to be is so crazy. Like it's Ty West at his best in that way, like just making it weirder than it has to be. All I gotta say is a suitcase full of body parts shook me to shit for some reason. It's just like something about that, seeing that in slow motion, just like he does it, man. He always has these images that get stuck in my brain.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the favorite of this trilogy, the what are we calling it? The X trilogy or the Pearl trilogy or the Maxxxine trilogy? The Ty West Mia Goth trilogy. I think Pearl for me was my favorite. I liked X. I kind of align with what you guys were saying. I think the last act where it gets crazy is where I started to feel like, oh, okay, this is fun, but it's not nailing it for me. Like there was a point early on where I was just like, man, I love this. I love the feel of this.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I was just like, sometimes you do that where you're watching a movie and you just think, oh, I might love this movie. This is gonna be, this is, I can't wait to say I love this movie, and then like a little bit while later you're like, yeah, okay, I love it for being what it is, but I'm not carried away by the awesomeness of it or whatever as much as I was initially. But I will say that like I think that it's a rare example for me of a movie where despite its flaws or what I conceive as flaws in the sort of the storytelling being a little all over the place, that like it was so stylish and it was in that vein you're talking about, Steve, where it felt like this is kind of what Ty West's movies have been leading up to. So ever since House of the Devil, he's had these little moments of nostalgia and kind of creating a pastiche of something while he's doing something kind of unique. And I just thought this had that all over it, and I was really enjoying the well, you're like in a room that where like the overhead light is making something really bright and overexposed, but then there's like these really dark shadows. It just reminded me of those 80s films that maybe you guys are kind of alluding to, where it would be like a low rent kind of Dirty Harry or Death Wish type movie where they would have a killer that was killing people, and it would just be a mysterious voice, and you'd see the black leather glove or you'd see the black leather jacket or whatever little marker that the killer has that you're kind of tracking through the story. Even the movie Cruising, it kind of reminded me of that in some ways. There's a real sleazy backdrop. And a kind of a world that feels sort of unforgiving. Like if you were in this world, it seems like a world where if you were alone, you're truly alone. So there is a lot of stuff going on with this film, but I think it was fun and stylish, and that really kind of made up for any story deficiencies that it had for me. And yeah, it's as much about watching Mia Goth act her pants off as it is anything else. And it's fun to see Giancarlo Esposito playing a sort of different guy. It's fun to see Kevin Bacon show up and just be the sleaziest guy in the world. It's fun to see a scrotum get squashed under the heel of a shoe and the balls bust out. So I don't know. There's just a lot about this movie that's really fun and educational.
Yeah, for sure. Just smash those balls.
Jesus Christ.
I jumped out of my seat Right.
Well, I mean, and that's an indication of Maxxine's character that I think is fun too. That like she has learned from her experience in the movie X, and she's
Yeah.
just not. She doesn't have anywhere past you've crossed her. You
Yeah.
know, like when she goes and beats Kevin Bacon when he's sitting in the car, and she, bloodies his face.
Yeah.
Stuff like that was just like, I don't know. It was a fun way to say what is this character like now that she's been through this traumatic thing. It was like to me kind of more fun than like the overly traumatized Laurie Strode we got in those new Halloween movies a few years ago. It was like more fun to see a character who like has taken that okay, well fuck you attitude and turned it into something really, really like you don't want to tangle with Maxxine. You don't want to get in her way. And that way she's very much like Pearl, who was scary to me because there would be no good way to end a conversation with Pearl. There'd be no good way to like end a conversation and walk away.
Because she would chase you with a pitchfork.
Or she would think you were doing something you weren't doing, or be offended, or have her feelings hurt, or think you were leaving her, and you wouldn't be able to say, no, I'll stay. Because then she's, like, there's no way. So, like, I like the way that Mia Goth, she does that well. She plays a character who you really can be kind of unsettled by.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Sue, am I the only one that saw Longlegs?
Yes, you are.
Maybe we'll save that for a conversation where we've all seen it. But
okay.
Yeah. But I enjoyed it. I feel like now that the actual word of mouth has come out for Longlegs, that you're getting more sort of actual reactions. I feel like for months, or at least for a few weeks, every bit of hype about this being the scariest movie you've ever seen, and people are having like heart palpitations, all this stuff. I think it kind of oversells an aspect of the movie that might not hit for as many people. I'm not saying this movie isn't scary, but I'm saying this movie's chills and thrills are much more like cerebral, get under your skin type stuff than they are like imagery that's going to horrify you. But I do think it's a scary movie, and I do think it's got a lot of levels and a lot of things going on with it. And I was impressed. And I guess the main thing I wanted to say about this movie, because I thought, Steve, you might have some thoughts about this, is there a category of movies where the cinema score, which in this case is a C+, which would indicate a movie that people did not get what they thought they were getting, right? Like C+ cinema score kind of means people didn't feel like they saw the movie that they were sold. But this is a movie that's doing well and has good word of mouth, even if it's not maybe the movie that the marketing has been telling people that it is. So I was just wondering about that. What's that category of a movie that has a low cinema score but is clearly a success that audiences are taking something away from it? Because it's kind of, isn't it like this huge hit for A24?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a massive overperformance. But this is actually a Neon release. So
Neon. Okay, you're right.
This is like a, read it and weep to A24.
Well,
based on what they've done recently. But
I guess that's where did I hear A24 getting looped into the conversation on this? I guess it was because people were saying, see A24, if you put a real marketing budget behind some of these movies, you might get
that's what it was
to them. Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Maxxxine is it performed well for A24, but that's not a great example. Like there wasn't very much marketing behind that. And Longlegs has had like an insanely long lead marketing campaign with tons of imagery and posters and spooky stuff, and just really great job at marketing the movie. But yeah, I mean, a C+, I mean, it's tough because like a C+ for horror is not that bad. I mean, it is not good, but I mean, usually like horror gets like an extra half step down, so like it's more like probably in a B realm like of what other movies might get as a cinema score. Also cinema score, like what you're describing as like a little bit of a bait and switch in terms of what the movie is. Like these cinema scores are usually taken from like people seeing the film opening night, so it's like people that were the most eager to see it, and they may be the most opinionated about something that didn't meet their expectations. So it can kind of sway lower because of that factor. But I mean, I don't know, like this week's performance, like the day-to-day weekday performances haven't been that horrible for it, or haven't been even really that bad. It's been pretty good actually for Longlegs, like through this week. So I mean, this is going to be a big movie for Neon, for just original horror, for Oz Perkins. I mean, it's just going to be a big success all around. And I don't know. I'm really looking forward to seeing. It was between Maxxxine and Longlegs, and I feel like Longlegs will probably be around in theaters a little longer than Maxxxine will. So I have a chance to go see that maybe this week or next.
It's got to stay in theaters at least long enough for like Variety to publish Longlegs has long legs.
Yeah, obviously.
I want to see that headline. That'll make me happy.
Will you say John was right?
John was right.
I want you to be like
I wear a John was right t-shirt. John was right. Like Magneto was right. I love that, man. Like X-Men 97.
Yeah.
What else have you guys been watching?
I'll stop there.
Yeah, I don't think much. I mean, I've been just trying to keep up with a lot of shows and stuff and get to the theater to see one movie this week. And yeah, like this next week is going to be more going to go see Twisters this weekend and hopefully go see Longlegs. I mean, I'm going out of town next weekend. I'm going to see Deadpool while I'm away. Yeah, I don't know. Like this next like 7 to 10 days, I'll probably see a lot more than I have in the last 7. But yeah, this feels like a good stopping point for me too.
I just wanted to mention Sunny and Lady in the Lake on Apple TV. Great shows. Rashida Jones killing it on Sunny. It's pretty much she carries that entire show. Her husband is killed possibly by a robot, and she has to explore that while living in Japan. Really
no,
cool.
I'd seen a picture of her with a robot, and I knew there was some. I mean, that sounded like an interesting movie. So
yeah, and then
I'll check it out.
Lady in the Lake, Moses Ingram, Baltimore's own, School for the Arts.
Yeah.
Graduate. Do they like talk about her a lot? I feel like that. She's so.
I have missed it when she's come through, but she's come by to visit the school at least once since I've worked there.
Oh, that's incredible.
So yeah, no, it's cool. She's one of those little success stories, and I like the fact that once you get past all the stupid bullshit, fan reaction that any actor. That's particularly probably any actor that's a woman of color that takes a role in a Star Wars thing. I like that now it's just kind of died down to just sort of like people know who Moses Ingram is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you don't always get the luck of that when you're like one of these Star Wars actors. Some people like say, fuck this, and they quit. But I do think Moses Ingram seems like someone who has been able to kind of, capitalize on it. Or at least, like I said, that name is out there. Even if... Yeah, people were pretty nasty to her for no real reason. That wasn't her fault that Obi-Wan wasn't particularly well written.
Yeah. And then 2 more shows. Those About to Die, the Peacock Roman Times show. It's rated a 54% on Rotten Tomatoes, but I thought it's fun as hell. It's a fun show, man. It is. If you had a Spartacus sort of fandom. This will scratch your itch in a little ways. It's violent, it's sexual. There's a lot of political, backhandedness. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a fun show, and Anthony Hopkins is on the first episode. And then the last show I want to talk about is Suicide Squad. Asakai. It is an anime version of Suicide Squad characters. It's not normal. They got kind of thrown into this magical isekai sort of world where it's like knights and magic and stuff like that. So it's like the regular Suicide Squad. I mean, it's a variation. Sandman is in it. And then another character that isn't a part of the movie one. And they go to this magical world where they have to help. They got hired to kind of solve an issue in this magical world. It's weird. It's like, it's like a Japanese take on the Suicide Squad, but it's fun and available on Max to watch. It's coming out weekly.
And I just wanted to mention, since you mentioned Spartacus, did you guys know there's a Spartacus spinoff in the works?
No.
It's like a retcon. You remember the character of Asher on that show? Did you watch that show?
That's a sneaky guy, right?
Yeah, the
Asher's
Speaky guy who got decapitated very decidedly in the show. Well, the new show is a retcon that supposes what if he survived that and inherited the gladiator school. Which is such a strange thing to do, a retcon show, but it's the same creative people behind it. And Spartacus was one of the most off-the-chain shows when it was really going crazy. I wonder, like, I can't imagine they're thinking of bringing that back without the idea that it's going to be nuts. So, I'll definitely tune in to see what's up with that whenever it comes out. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh, the House of Asher. I was like, yeah, didn't he die? And it's like, oh yeah, he was. And he was one of the worst of the worst too. So it's interesting that he's the character they want to bring back. Anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting that they're doing a sort of a retcon of their own thing. Like it's supposed to build on the show, but also it's taking a character that died and making him the lead of a new show. So I'm really curious what that even will be.
Yeah. Interesting.
All right.
That's it, guys. Schmovie.com is the website. You can go there to listen to past episodes and to jump into any podcast platform that you may like to subscribe to us through. YouTube.com/Movie Podcast if you want the visual options where you can see Ronald trying to get his physical media not blurred out during an episode. It's fun stuff, guys. Trust us. But thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week. And as always, you've made our day. Thanks.